They told me no one was watching. They were wrong.
This is a sci-fi story about a child who was never meant to be noticed, and the moment someone decided that letting him disappear was no longer an option, he learned early how to stay unnoticed, not because anyone taught him, but because attention had always felt dangerous. In a world still recovering from war, children like him learned to take up less space, to speak only when spoken to exist quietly so they would not become another problem someone had to solve. He was not abandoned. He was simply left behind in the way systems often leave people behind, without explanation, without intention, without malice. Just absence. The war had ended, but its consequences lingered in places no one wanted to look at for too long. Entire cities rebuilt themselves faster than the people inside them. Adults moved forward because they were expected to. Children adapted because they had no choice. He lived in that space between expectation and neglect, where survival meant learning how to disappear in plain sight. No one asked where he went during the day. No one noticed when he stopped speaking altogether. He spent most of his time watching people, patterns, movements. He learned which streets were safe at which hours, which faces to avoid, which sounds meant trouble. Silence became his shield. Invisibility became his skill. He did not think of himself as lonely. Loneliness implied wanting something else. He had learned not to want. Wanting made things hurt. The first sign that something had changed came without warning. A presence he could not place. Not footsteps. Not a voice. Just the feeling that the space around him had shifted. Children are often more sensitive to these changes than adults. They notice when the world stops behaving the way it should. He felt it before he saw her, a stillness that did not belong. When he finally looked up, fear should have come first. It did not. She was not human. He understood that immediately, not because of how she looked, but because of how she observed him. Humans looked past him. She did not. Her attention was focused, deliberate, and calm. There was no surprise in her expression, no judgment, no urgency. It felt as if she had been aware of him long before he became aware of her. That realization unsettled him more than her presence itself. She did not speak at first. She did not approach him quickly. She allowed the distance between them to exist, as if she understood that distance was the only thing keeping him steady. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, controlled. She asked him questions no one had ever asked him before. Where do you go when you don't want to be found? What do you listen for when everything is quiet? He did not answer immediately. Not because he did not know the answers, but because no one had ever waited long enough for him to respond. Their encounters followed no pattern he could recognize. She appeared when she chose to, never at the same time, never in the same place. He began to realize that her presence was not accidental. He was being observed, not in the way authorities observed people, not to classify or correct. This was different. It felt personal, intentional, as if someone had decided that he mattered, even if the world around him had not. Over time, he noticed changes, subtle ones, moments where danger passed him by without explanation. Situations that should have ended badly simply did not. He did not understand why. He only understood that something was intervening, protecting him without being asked. The realization brought fear rather than comfort. Protection implied interest. Interest implied consequences. And consequences, he knew, were never meant for children like him. When he finally asked her why she was watching him, she did not answer directly. Instead, she told him something that stayed with him long after she left. Some lives go unnoticed because they are insignificant. Others go unnoticed because they are not meant to exist at all. The difference between the two, she explained, was choice. And someone had made. After that realization, the world no longer felt neutral. Every place he walked through seemed to carry meaning it had not carried before. Corners felt watched. Silences felt intentional. The comfort he had once found in being overlooked was gone, replaced by the uneasy knowledge that someone was now paying attention. She continued to appear, always at a distance that felt chosen rather than accidental. When she was near, nothing bad happened. When she was gone, he noticed how carefully everything around him behaved, as if the world itself was hesitating. He began to understand that her protection was not unlimited. It was precise, calculated. She did not remove danger entirely. She redirected it, altered outcomes in ways he could not always see. When he asked her if this was normal for her kind, she told him there was nothing normal about it. Observation was allowed. Intervention was not. Every time she adjusted the path of something meant to reach him, she stepped further outside the boundaries she was supposed to respect. That knowledge sat between them, unspoken but heavy. The more she protected him, the more visible he became. Systems notice patterns. Absences are recorded. Events that do not resolve the way they should invite questions. She knew this. He could see it in the way her presence shortened, in the way she listened more than she spoke, in the way her attention felt divided. When he asked her if someone else was coming, she did not deny it. She only told him that attention, once earned, cannot be withdrawn. It can only be explained. That was when fear finally found him. Not the sudden fear of being hurt, but the slower fear of being responsible for someone else's risk. He had survived by staying invisible. Now, his existence was forcing someone else into danger. Someone who had chosen him without being asked. Someone who saw value where the world had seen excess. He did not know how to carry that weight. Children are not meant to decide what others must risk for them. She noticed the change in him immediately. Fear, she explained, was expected. Guilt was not. Protection, she said, was never meant to be deserved. It was meant to be chosen. Her words were calm, but there was urgency beneath them. She was running out of space to keep him hidden. Others were asking questions she could no longer delay answering. His presence had crossed from anomaly to liability. When he asked her what would happen if she stopped protecting him, she was honest. The world would behave the way it was designed to. No cruelty, no mercy, just efficiency. He understood what that meant. Systems do not care if a life disappears quietly. They only care if its disappearance disrupts balance. He asked her if she would let that happen. She did not answer immediately. That silence was the first time he felt truly afraid of losing her. The choice came sooner than either of them expected. She told him she would not be able to come back the way she had before. Monitoring had increased. Her actions were being reviewed. The space they had shared was no longer private. She did not frame this as goodbye. She framed it as consequence. Some decisions, once made, remove the possibility of return. She had crossed a line the moment she decided his life was worth the risk. When she left that time, she did not disappear immediately. She paused just long enough to make sure he was looking at her, not as a subject, not as a responsibility, but as someone who understood what had been done for him. That look carried something heavier than reassurance. It carried expectation. Not of gratitude, but of awareness. He was no longer a child the world could afford to ignore. After she was gone, the silence felt different again. Not empty, not safe. It was filled with the knowledge that his life now occupied space in a system much larger than himself. He did not know if he would see her again. He did not know what explanation would be given for his continued existence. He only knew that something irreversible had happened. Someone had chosen him.